The mysterious signal. Commander Wyatt Staples stared at the flickering console, his heart pounding in his chest. The signal was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Something in the far reaches of space was calling out, something unknown. The ship's AI confirmed it wasn't of human origin, which only heightened the tension in the command center. This was it, the moment every space explorer both feared and yearned for, first contact. As the crew buzzed with excitement and apprehension, Commander Staples tried to maintain his composure. He ordered the ship to approach the source of the signal, knowing that whatever awaited them could change the course of human history. The vast emptiness of space seemed to close in around them as the ship edged closer, the unknown looming like a shadow over their mission. The signal grew stronger, more complex, as if it were alive, pulsating with an intelligence that defied understanding. The ship's sensors detected a massive structure in the distance, shrouded in darkness. As they neared, the structure revealed itself, a black ship, unlike anything they had ever seen. It was vast, ominous, and completely alien. The ship's exterior was smooth, without visible weapons or engines, just a black void that absorbed light. Commander Staples ordered the ship to halt at a safe distance, his mind racing with possibilities. Was this an ancient relic or an active vessel, friend or foe? There were no answers, only questions. A voice crackled through the communication channel, not from any known language, but from the ship itself. The AI struggled to translate the message, and when it finally did, the words sent chills down Staples' spine. "We have been waiting for you." The black ship began to move, its surface rippling like liquid metal. It was alive, or at least controlled by a living intelligence far beyond human comprehension. The crew watched in silence as the alien vessel drew nearer, its intentions unclear. The ship's AI detected no life forms aboard the black ship, yet it was undoubtedly responding to their presence. Commander Staples knew he had to act quickly. They were on the brink of an encounter that could either bring humanity to new heights or lead to its annihilation. With a deep breath, Staples initiated first contact protocols, broadcasting a message of peace and cooperation. The black ship responded instantly, a beam of light shooting out and enveloping the human vessel. The crew braced for impact, but instead, they found themselves drifting into the unknown, drawn into the heart of the alien ship. Inside the alien vessel, the crew was engulfed in darkness as the human ship was pulled into the black vessel. The view outside was obscured, leaving them in a void of silence and shadows. Commander Staples felt a creeping unease as they floated in the alien ship's interior, waiting for something to happen. The ship's AI reported that all systems were functional, but the environment outside their hull was beyond analysis. It was as if they had entered a different dimension, where the laws of physics were altered or suspended entirely. Suddenly, lights flickered on, illuminating a vast chamber around them. The walls were smooth and metallic, yet they pulsed with a strange energy. Symbols and patterns began to form, glowing with a soft light that seemed to communicate a message. The ship's AI struggled to decode the symbols, finding no match in any known database. As the crew stared in awe, a doorway opened in the chamber's far wall, leading deeper into the alien ship. Commander Staples knew they had to explore further, despite the risks. This was humanity's first opportunity to learn from an advanced civilization, and they couldn't let fear hold them back. Equipped with protective suits and advanced scanners, Staples led a small team through the doorway. The corridor beyond was wide and seemed to stretch on forever, lined with the same glowing symbols that adorned the chamber. There was a sense of purpose in the design, as if the ship itself was guiding them. The further they ventured, the more the atmosphere changed. The air grew thick with an unfamiliar scent, and the walls began to hum with energy. The ship was alive, and it was watching them. They reached another chamber, this one smaller but filled with strange devices. At the center was a pedestal with an orb floating above it, emitting a soft, pulsating light. Staples felt drawn to it, as if it were calling out to him specifically. The ship's AI warned of an energy spike, but Staples couldn't resist. He reached out and touched the orb, and in that instant, his mind was flooded with images, memories of a civilization long gone, of wars fought across galaxies, and of the Black Ship's creation as a last refuge. The orb contained the collective knowledge of an ancient race preserved for eons, waiting for someone worthy to discover it. Staples realized that they were chosen, that humanity had a role to play in the continuation of this legacy. But the images also carried a warning, an impending threat that was coming for them, for Earth, and for everything they held dear. The Black Ship had been a fortress, a guardian against an ancient enemy that was now awakening. Staples knew they had to act quickly. They had been entrusted with a powerful gift, but it came with a heavy responsibility. The fate of humanity now rested in their hands, and they were far from ready. The awakening threat. The return to their ship was tense, the crew uneasy with the knowledge imparted by the orb. Commander Staples could feel the weight of the responsibility pressing down on him. They had uncovered the remnants of a once great civilization, but with it came the knowledge of an enemy so powerful it had driven that civilization to extinction. The Black Ship's purpose was now clear. It was a last bastion, a final line of defense against an ancient force that sought to consume all life. The orb's warning was unmistakable. The enemy was stirring, and it was only a matter of time before it found them. Back on their own ship, Staples called an emergency meeting. The crew was divided, some wanting to return to Earth to prepare a defense, others arguing they should attempt to learn more about the enemy before it was too late. The debate was fierce, but Staples knew they had little time to waste. In the end, they decided on a risky plan. They would stay within the Black Ship, using its advanced technology to gather as much information as possible. They hoped to uncover a weakness in the enemy's defenses or find a way to bolster Earth's own. But time was against them. The Black Ship's sensors detected an anomaly in the far reaches of the system, a disturbance that could only mean one thing: the enemy was awakening. The crew worked tirelessly, coming through the data provided by the orb, deciphering the alien technology, and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The tension on the ship was palpable, each crew member driven by the knowledge that failure was not an option. As they delved deeper into the Black Ship's systems, they began to understand the scale of what they were facing. The enemy was not just a single force, but a horde of entities, each more powerful and destructive than anything humanity had ever encountered. But they also found hope. The ancient civilization had not gone down without a fight. They had left behind powerful weapons and defenses, hidden within the Black Ship, waiting to be activated by those who were worthy. Staples and his team began the process of unlocking these weapons, their minds racing against the clock. The ship's AI assisted them, translating the complex commands and guiding them through the process. But the enemy was drawing closer, and they knew they were running out of time. Finally, they succeeded. The Black Ship's systems roared to life, its weapons charging, its defenses activating. They had done it. They had unlocked the last line of defense against the ancient enemy. But as the ship prepared for battle, a message appeared on the console, a final warning from the ancient civilization. To awaken the enemy is to awaken the end. Prepare yourselves, for the war that is coming will decide the fate of all. Staples felt a chill run down his spine. The battle ahead would be like nothing they had ever faced. The enemy was coming, and they had only one chance to stop it. The final stand. The Black Ship surged with energy as its weapons systems powered up, the crew bracing themselves for the coming battle. Commander Staples could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for, the battle that would determine the fate of humanity. The enemy appeared on the ship's sensors, a massive fleet of ships emerging from the darkness of space. They were unlike anything the crew had ever seen, their forms twisted and alien, their energy signatures off the charts. This was the force that had driven an entire civilization to extinction, and now it was coming for them. Staples gave the order to fire, and the Black Ship's weapons roared to life. Beams of energy shot out, striking the enemy ships with devastating force. But the enemy was relentless, their ships swarming forward, closing the distance with terrifying speed. The crew fought bravely, manning their stations and coordinating the ship's defenses. But the enemy was overwhelming, their numbers too great, their power too immense. The Black Ship's shields began to falter, its weapons systems struggling to keep up with the onslaught. Staples knew they were running out of options. The enemy was closing in, and soon they would be overrun. But he refused to give up. He knew they had to keep fighting, to hold the line at all costs. This was humanity's last stand, and he would not let it end in defeat. As the enemy ships drew closer, Staples made a desperate decision. He ordered the Black Ship's air to activate its self-destruct sequence, setting the ship's core to overload. If they couldn't defeat the enemy, they would take as many of them with them as they could. The crew looked at him in shock, but they knew he was right. They had no other choice. They had to do whatever it took to stop the enemy, even if it meant sacrificing themselves. The enemy ships swarmed around them, their weapons pounding the Black Ship's shields, but Staples and his crew fought on, determined to hold the line until the end. Finally, the ship's core reached critical mass, and Staples gave the order to abandon ship. The crew scrambled to the escape pods, launching themselves into space as the Black Ship's core began to overload. As they drifted away from the ship, they watched in silence as it detonated, a massive explosion ripping through the enemy fleet. The force of the blast was unimaginable, wiping out the enemy ships in an instant. But as the light from the explosion faded, Staples knew the battle was far from over. The enemy was still out there, and they would stop at nothing to destroy humanity. As the escape pods drifted through space, Staples made a vow. They would fight on, no matter the cost. They would find a way to defeat the enemy, to protect humanity from the darkness that threatened to consume them. This was only the beginning of the war that would decide the fate of all, and Commander Staples was determined to see it through to the end. The aftermath. The escape pods drifted through the wreckage of the battle, the crew staring in shock at the devastation around them. The Black Ship was gone, reduced to a cloud of debris, but the enemy fleet had been destroyed with it. For now, they were safe. But the victory felt hollow. They had lost their ship, their home, and many of their crewmates. And the knowledge that the enemy was still out there, waiting, cast a dark shadow over their relief. Commander Staples floated in his pod, staring out at the stars. He knew they had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The enemy was still out there, and they would stop at nothing to destroy humanity. As the pods drifted toward the nearest habitable planet, the crew began to pick up the pieces. They had lost much, but they had also gained something invaluable: the knowledge of their enemy, the weapons to fight back, and the determination to see this through to the end. Staples knew they couldn't return to Earth. Not yet. They had to continue the fight, to gather more allies, to find more of the ancient civilization's weapons, to prepare for the battles to come. The planet they landed on was barren, but it would serve as a temporary base. The crew set to work, repairing their damaged equipment, salvaging what they could from the wreckage of the battle. As they worked, Staples couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The planet was lifeless, but there was something out there, something that had survived the battle. He ordered the crew to remain vigilant, to prepare for the worst. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. As the days passed, the crew began to adapt to their new surroundings. They set up a perimeter, established communication with Earth, and began planning their next move. But the sense of unease never left them. They were on the edge of something big, something that would change everything. The enemy was still out there, and they were coming for them. Staples knew they had to be ready. The war that was coming would decide the fate of all, and they couldn't afford to lose. The search for allies. Commander Staples knew they couldn't win this war alone. The enemy was too powerful, too vast. They needed allies, and they needed them fast. Using the Black Ship's technology, the crew sent out a signal, a call for help. They knew it was a long shot, but they had no other choice. They had to find others who were willing to fight, who could help them in the battles to come. Days turned into weeks, and the crew began to lose hope. The planet they had landed on was desolate, and they had no way of knowing if their signal had even been received. But then one day, they received a response. A ship appeared in orbit, unlike anything they had ever seen. It was sleek and fast, clearly advanced beyond anything humanity had ever built. The ship landed, and out stepped a group of beings, humanoid but clearly not human. They introduced themselves as the last remnants of a once great civilization, one that had also been devastated by the ancient enemy. They had received the crew's signal and had come to offer their assistance. They had been fighting the enemy for centuries, and they knew how to defeat them. Staples was overjoyed. They had found their allies, their hope in this dark war. The new allies shared their knowledge and technology, helping the crew to prepare for the coming battles. But there was still much work to be done. The enemy was vast, and the war would be long and brutal. But with their new allies by their side, Staples knew they had a fighting chance. The crew worked tirelessly, building new ships, new weapons, new defenses. They knew the battles ahead would be fierce, but they were ready. They had to be. As the preparations continued, Staples couldn't help but think about the enemy. What drove them? What was their purpose? He knew they had to find answers to understand their foe if they were to have any hope of defeating them. But for now, they had to focus on the war. The time for answers would come later. For now, they had to fight, to survive, to protect humanity from the darkness that threatened to consume them. The final battle. The time had come. The enemy was closing in, and the final battle was about to begin. Commander Staples stood on the bridge of his new ship, staring out at the vast armada before them. The Allied fleet had grown, ships from across the galaxy joining the fight. But even with their combined forces, the enemy was vast, their numbers overwhelming. Staples knew they had to win this battle. The fate of humanity, of the entire galaxy, rested on their shoulders. The battle began with a flash of light, the two fleets colliding in a storm of energy and fire. The enemy ships were relentless, their weapons cutting through the Allied fleet with terrifying precision. But the Allies fought back with everything they had. They had learned from their previous encounters, using the Black Ship's technology and the knowledge of their new allies to hold the line. Staples led the charge, his ship cutting through the enemy fleet, targeting their command ships. The battle raged on, each side suffering heavy losses. As the battle reached its peak, Staples knew they had to make a final push. They had to strike at the heart of the enemy fleet, to destroy their command center and break their will to fight. He ordered his ship to charge forward, leading a small group of elite ships in a daring assault. The enemy fleet closed in around them, but they fought their way through, their weapons blazing. Finally, they reached the enemy command ship, a massive vessel that dwarfed everything else in the fleet. Staples knew this was it, the moment that would decide the fate of the war. He ordered his ship to round the enemy command ship, their shields absorbing the impact as they crashed into the hull. The crew stormed the enemy ship, fighting their way to the command center. The enemy forces were fierce, but Staples and his crew fought with a determination born of desperation. They knew they couldn't fail, not now. Finally, they reached the command center, where the enemy leader awaited them. It was a being of pure energy, its form shifting and changing as it spoke. The enemy leader offered them a choice: surrender, and they would be spared, or continue to fight and face annihilation. Staples knew what he had to do. He refused the offer, knowing that surrender would mean the end of humanity. The battle in the command center was fierce, but Staples and his crew fought with everything they had. They had to win. They had to end this war. Finally, they managed to defeat the enemy leader, the command center exploding in a burst of energy. The enemy fleet began to falter, their ships breaking apart as the command center was destroyed. The Allied fleet rallied, striking at the remaining enemy ships with renewed vigor. The tide of the battle turned, the enemy fleet crumbling under the assault. And then it was over. The enemy fleet was destroyed, the war won. Humanity had triumphed, against all odds. But the cost was high. Many lives had been lost, and the galaxy was scarred by the battles that had been fought. As Staples stood on the bridge of his ship, staring out at the wreckage of the battle, he knew that they had won a great victory, but that the price had been steep. They had saved humanity, but at what cost? The galaxy was free, but the darkness still lingered, a reminder of the war that had been fought and the lives that had been lost. Staples knew that the future was uncertain, but he also knew that they had won a chance to rebuild, to create a new era of peace and prosperity. And for that, he was grateful. The war was over, but the fight for the future was just beginning, and Staples knew that humanity was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead.